Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. Game Week 12 is proving to be a really popular week to hit the wildcard chip, so I've put together two drafts I really like the look of. Hopefully you do too. Welcome back everyone to another video, and due to quite a few messages in my DMs over the last couple of days, I have put together a couple of wildcard drafts that I really like the look of ahead of Game Week 12. Unfortunately, I've already used my wildcard chip, but if I had it, this is probably the week I would be looking at using it between now and Game Week 19 when it all resets, of course. I do like the look of wildcard this game week. I've put together a couple. This first one doesn't include Mo Salah, but the second one does. So you can have a look between the two of them. Maybe you do want Mo Salah, maybe you don't. Either way, I've got you covered, hopefully. And I'll be running through a few variations and a few players that could swap in and out for both of these drafts as well, just in case there are the odd player here or there that you don't like the look of. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and importantly hit subscribe. We're just over 100 away now from 5,000. It would be amazing to hit that before we get to 2026. So thank you so much if you're willing to do so. Let's look at wildcard draft number one to begin with. Starting in goal, I've gone with Petrovic alongside Dubravka. Dubravka's just an obvious one. Even if you don't have bench boost, you might as well have a 4 million playing keeper. Petrovic is a bit more of a complicated one. You could look at Kelleher instead at 4.5 as well, or you could upgrade to someone like a David Raya. A lot more expensive though. I think he's now 1.4 million more expensive than Petrovic. So I personally don't have a ton of money in this draft. I've got 0.1 spare with this exact 11 or 15 rather. So if you've got a lot more money than me, that is an upgrade I would make. However, I don't, so I'm going with Petrovic. He's got a few good home fixtures between now and the turn of the year. And actually, outside of one or two calamities, Bournemouth's defence, especially at home, has been pretty tight. Obviously, there have been a couple of games that have skewed the data a little bit, but he's still not a bad keeper to own. He'll get the odd save point. He'll get the odd clean sheet. I still have relative confidence that at 4.5 million, he is a worthwhile downgrade to make the rest of this affordable. Into my back line, I have kept one Arsenal defender. That is Gabriel. I don't think anyone's going to have any contention or problems with that, considering the form he's in. He's got goal threat, he's got DEFCON, and obviously playing for the best defence in the league. I suppose the big question is whether or not to still go for the Arsenal double up. And I would love to. If I can afford Raya with this draft, I go for it. If I could have Virgil van Dijk and someone like a Timber or a Calafiori, I would have it. But with the money I've got available, I think it has to kind of be one or the other in terms of Virgil van Dijk or a second Arsenal defender. So there's a real head-to-head here. Do you back the better defence, that is Arsenal, who have slightly worse fixtures over the next run? And the problem with Timber or Calafiori is that although they've gotten really good minutes so far, we're hitting the period of the season where they might miss the odd game or get rotated a little bit to keep them fresh for the bigger games. So this might be an opportunity to look at Virgil van Dijk, who we know during this period of time, he's not going to miss any games, barring injury. He's going to play 90 minutes week in, week out. He's good on the DEFCON, and Liverpool do have good fixtures up until and beyond Christmas. The only problem there is their defensive data has been nowhere near as good as Arsenal's. So it is a proper 50-50. I think if I was on a wild card, I would probably risk it with Virgil van Dijk. I think he's got the routes to points, he's got goal threat, and I do like the fixtures and lower ownership as well at the moment. And I think Timber and Calafiori both do well over this run, but I do have a gut feeling that they miss a game or two at some point, and it will be really frustrating if they miss the week that you really need them most. So if you can afford having them alongside a Virgil van Dijk or a Raya in goal, I'd go for it. But otherwise, I do like the security of Van Dijk. Over to the other three. Bijol we won't talk about too much because he is just that 3.9 million defender on your bench every week. Richards and Truffert, both good value for money, and it gets you into a decent defence. Bournemouth, of course, I've got coverage in goal with Petrovic anyway, but Truffert, again, can rotate in and out with Richards over this next stretch. Their defensive data, like I mentioned, isn't terrible aside from those couple of calamities. And then Richards as well, playing for one of the better defences in the league, good on the DEFCON, and he might maybe miss a game at some point, but he is undoubtedly in their strongest 11. And I would be surprised to see him miss more than one through this entire stretch. So I think between the two of them, that works for me. I'd prefer Senesi if I had the money over Truffert, but there's not enough in it for me to make compromises elsewhere. I'd prefer to shave the money here, go with Truffert, who's looked pretty good going forward, might pick up the odd DEFCON, and of course covers the same clean sheets. Into the midfield, Saka does still make it in for me right now. At over 10 million, there are question marks as to whether or not he's good value for money. But if you're not spending the money on Saka, I'm kind of the mind, where are you spending it right now? There aren't many strikers that I prefer to upgrade the players I've got here to. And in midfield, I've got coverage of a Man United midfielder and Semenyo as well. Some people are even arguing if Semenyo should be in on a wild card. I personally think he absolutely should be with the fixtures to come, but he's maybe gone off form a little bit in the last couple of game weeks. I'm certain it will come back. I have no doubts about him moving into the next run of fixtures that Bournemouth have. So with all of that in mind, I think Saka stays. I think he's a sensible inclusion on wildcard. Having a bit of Arsenal attack makes sense. And even with one goal, last week he managed 12 points. He's great on the bonus points because he's so creative, he's so involved, and he gets the odd DEFCON as well. So I think for 10 million, it's worth taking the punt on Saka. And he is also a sort of secondary captaincy option some weeks where you might look away from Erling Haaland. They match up fairly well in terms of fixtures, so there are weeks where you could look at captaining Saka, even arguably in game week 12 against Spurs at home over Erling Haaland. So I quite like him for those reasons as well. Already talked about Semenyo. Bruno Fernandes could just as easily be in Burmo. I have no real heavy preference on which one to go for right now. I suppose the only reason I've got Fernandes in here is to prove that it's possible for obviously 0.4 million extra, so you need to squeeze him in. Whereas with Mbeumo, you do save that little bit extra, and you could use that elsewhere. There are a couple of other upgrades I've already mentioned, and one or two yet to come, that you could use that extra 0.4 on. Mbeumo's got the greater open play attacking threat, but he does go off to AFCON fairly soon. Bruno Fernandes, worse on the open play threat, but he does have penalties. He does have DEFCON in his arsenal as well, and it saves you a transfer later. So I think I'm very slightly veering towards Fernandes on a wild card, but I don't think there's a lot in it. And there are some of you out there who just won't want Fernandes. I completely get it. And Mbeumo makes a lot of sense if you don't go with Fernandes. So Mbeumo, also great, and it does save you a bit of money. Minte, I think, would be almost an auto pick on a wild card right now because he's got some great home fixtures between now and the turn of the year. And he's been absolutely nailed into that Brighton 11 so far this season. He's got good underlying data, great fixtures to come, and he's only 6 million. I think it just makes a lot of sense to have him in, especially because during this period, we're going to be worried about rotation. Having those 90-minute men, especially at the cheaper price points, does fill me with a little bit more security going into this period where we do have several midweek games back to back to back. Minte feels less likely than last season to miss out on any of those, given his importance to the side. Finally, I've got Dewsbury Hall in my midfield. That could, if you've got the money, and some of you might do, that could be upgraded to someone like an Elliot Anderson at 5.3 million, who is in the conversation at least for penalties at Nottingham Forest. They've got good fixtures. He's so close every single week to hitting DEFCON. I think his actual points total so far this season gives him a little bit of a disservice, because he's got a lot more upside than that. Getting 2 attacking returns in 11 game weeks feels like on the low side for a player like Anderson. And DEFCON as well, he's never been more than 2 DEFCON points away from hitting the threshold in any game week. So there are plenty of weeks where he could have come away with a few more points. And with the fixtures, with the fact that they seem to be turning a corner, I also do like Elliot Anderson. But if you don't have the money, 4.9 million for Dewsbury Hall also feels like a bit of a bargain, given how important he is to Everton right now. And although the data isn't looking incredible on the eye, I still think he'll be plenty involved in a lot of what they do in a positive way going forwards. Into the forward line, probably the simplest section on a wild card. Haaland auto include. Mateta and Thiago, for me, are standout forwards alongside Erling Haaland. I would try to include both of them if I was wildcarding. Mateta's data is very, very good. Obviously bolstered by that one particular game week against Bournemouth. But even aside from that, it's still not bad. He's on penalties. Nketiah isn't back at the moment, so he's getting 90 minutes a match. There are question marks about how long Crystal Palace can maybe keep this up at this sort of level of performance, given that they are playing in Europe and they've got a thin squad. But I think until we see it slowing down and maybe Mateta gets injured or something through overworking, until we see that, I would still want him on a wild card. And then it's an easy swap down if you wanted to maybe save the money or move to someone a little bit cheaper. But on a wild card, I'd go with it anyway and not take the risk against him. Similar with Thiago, not quite as good on the fixtures over the next few game weeks, but they are coming. And he's got very good underlying data himself, a bit like Mateta, a bit like Haaland, 90 minutes on penalties, good underlying attacking data, even without penalties. And he's at 6.3 million. That is so cheap for a talismanic forward for a half-decent Premier League club, which Brentford absolutely are, by the way. I'd absolutely include him on a wildcard too. So this is wildcard draft number 1. I've gone through a few alternative picks here and there. Let's have a look at what a wildcard draft, including Mo Salah, might look like. Okay, so I'm not going to run through the full 15 again because there are actually only 3 changes between wildcard draft 1 and 2 here. But to include Mo Salah, I do need to shave 4.1 million, I think it is, from my team elsewhere to upgrade Bukayo Saka to Salah. Now, the main conversation here is that really worth it to get rid of Saka? And then in this draft, the other way I've made this all affordable is to get rid of a third forward and a Man United midfielder, whether that's Mbeumo or Bruno Fernandes. They probably need to go to make this all affordable. So is it worth having Salah plus someone like a Sarr or an Enzo Fernandez could equally be in there, maybe even Ndiaye as well at 6.5-ish million, plus losing a forward spot and going with someone like a Mark Giu, 4.2 million, won't play, will be stuck on your bench and give you less depth moving forward. So this wouldn't work for a bench boost if you still had that yet to play. Are all of those compromises worth it just to include Mo Salah? I think the answer to that question relies on how often you truly believe you're going to captain Salah over this period. He's got some very, very good fixtures up until the point he goes to AFCON in game week 17. I think at the start of the season, most of us wouldn't have even doubted the fact that Salah would be in our teams right now. It's only because he's looked a little bit off of it. The data's not quite as good. Liverpool just aren't functioning quite as well as they did last season. There are some green shoots, though, it must be said. And Mo Salah's attacking data is skewing in the right direction. Is that enough, though, to be making all of these compromises to include him and then take big bets on the fact that, okay, I'm going to captain him in a week like game week 12, you'd probably want to captain him ahead of Erling Haaland against Nottingham Forest. Could Erling Haaland beat him considering the form he's in? Yeah, absolutely he could. So there are risks here, and it's a lot of money to be spending on a bit of a differential that if you're not fully confident, it's just a big swing. And all of that in mind as well, the players you're getting rid of also have very good fixtures and good underlying attacking data. Saka is doing just as well as Salah for underlying data, in fact, slightly better, and has good fixtures the same weeks as Mo Salah has. So if you still wanted to go against Erling Haaland some of the weeks where he's got a more difficult fixture, you could just keep Bukayo Saka, not Mo Salah, and save the money and bolster your squad elsewhere and just captain him those weeks. I do understand it, though, why Salah would be tempting, because he could be the ultimate differential in this next patch of fixtures. I intentionally wanted to have 4 or 5 free transfers by this point, so it gave me the opportunity to go with Mo Salah. But for me, it's just down to how often I'd captain him. I might captain him once or twice in this run at most, but I think Erling Haaland's just been that good that I probably wouldn't go against him all that often. So if I'm buying a player who's north of 14 million, sacrificing Saka and Bruno Fernandes and a forward to do it, when I'm not captaining him all that often, I just don't know if it's worth it for me. But if it is, this is the way I'd do it. It would be Saka up to Salah, and then it would have to be a Man United midfielder like Bruno or Mbeumo down to Ismaila Sarr. Now, Sarr's data is also very, very good. He doesn't have the benefit of penalties or set pieces, but I do still feel like a haul or two is on the horizon. His data's just been too good. He's been hauling in every other competition other than the Premier League. Surely it's got to just be a matter of time. It does mean that you've got triple Crystal Palace, though. And whilst the fixtures look really good, I do have concerns over how quickly they might start to get tired over this run, given the games coming thick and fast. They've got Europe to compete with and that thin squad. I would definitely have a Crystal Palace attacker. Would I go with both of them on a wild card? Maybe. I do quite like Salah, and honestly, if I had the money in my previous draft to upgrade Minte to Ismaila Sarr, I might even do that because I think he is that good. But he goes off to AFCON in a few game weeks himself. So there's an argument to say at this point, maybe I'll just go with Mateta because I know he won't be a transfer out in the future. And Sarr, unfortunately, might just get points when I don't own him. And that's absolutely fine. This does mean that you're probably stuck in a 4-4-2 most weeks because you've got Mark Giu on the bench and Dewsbury Hall is playable sometimes. So it could be a 3-5-2 some weeks, but the rotation would start coming in between Dewsbury Hall, Truffert and Richards rather than having a stronger 15 with that third attacker being Thiago, who does have some good fixtures on the horizon as well. So let me know which draft you prefer, whether it's a Salah in or a Salah out. I think I'd probably go with Salah out personally, but I'll leave it up to your own interpretation. And if there are any players that I've missed, do feel free to drop a comment below. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about them over the next few days. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Leave a like and hit subscribe if you have done so. And I'll be back in the next few days as we prepare even more for Game Week 12 moving through the international break.